Alright, welcome back everyone. It's Argamaroth here, and today I have a guide for Eddie, the Nightmare Flame. Now in the past, I have definitely undervalued this fiery boy, but no longer. Alright, he is kind of a bit like a cheaper Orochi in many ways, and I don't really think the way that you get the most value out of him is how the devs intended it, but we'll go through it anyway. So from some random messing around, it's like, you know what, I'm gonna level up this guy, see what he can do. Ended up with him at Mythic 5 and everything. He's just ended up as my highest power hero, just out of nowhere. So taking a quick look at his guide, you'll notice it's recommending him as a backline DPS with all sorts of DPS talents such as attack and skill damage. However, this is probably the reason why most people think he's terrible, because he is terrible for that role. So let me just show you exactly what he's good at. So, going over base stats and abilities. Let's have a quick look at those base stats and I'll dive right into his abilities. His HP sits at a modest 2.28 million, better than most S tier DPS heroes by a slight margin, but still not really great. His attack is a rather low 80k, not terrible, but definitely puts him at a disadvantage compared to most other DPS heroes. More of a sort of tank level of attack. His armor is 3799, so almost 3.8k, which again is okay, but still pretty middling. Lower than most tanks, higher than most DPS, yeah. So let's have a look at his abilities, right? First up, skill number 1, his ultimate, Macro Pyre. Eddie plays the guitar, dealing 200% attack damage to all enemies in the front row, igniting them. Ignited targets receive an additional 40% attack damage for 3 rounds. Base damage is increased up to 300% and ignited damage up to 150% when this ability reaches level 3. Right, so Eddie has low attack but really good ratios. Right, he's also dealing continuous damage even when he's not attacking, which is hugely valuable, especially in the current shield meta. He's exceptionally good at keeping shields down, which is very important. His ultimate does only target the front row, however, which can hurt in some situations, but overall, an excellent ability. Skill number 2, Soulfire Mark. Eddie's basic attack deals 160% attack damage to all enemies in the front, and an additional 100% to ignited targets, restoring HP equal to 60% of his attack. At level 3, attack damage from this is up to 280%, with a bonus of 150 to ignited targets, and the restoration value up to 100% of his attack. So, despite his wording, this actually applies not only to his basic attacks, but also to his ultimate. So his basic attacks will be dealing basically triple his attack damage, and to the entire front row, which is pretty good. It's pretty damn good. And bonus damage to ignited targets, and especially with this build, everyone's going to be ignited all the time. And he's also getting self-heals. So from his abilities and his basic attacks, he's healing himself back up. Keeps him topped up, and it really sort of starts to play into his tanking ability. Skill number 3, Counterfire. Eddie ignites the enemy for 3 rounds when attacked. Ignited targets receive 60% attack damage when the round ends. At level 3, this increases to 100%. Despite the name and the effect basically being the same as the mark applied by his ultimate, this is actually a separate status, and both can be applied to the same target at once, increasing the damage over time. And Soulfire, his previous skill, will always trigger regardless of which version of the mark is applied. So this is very useful. Because of this, you probably want to put Eddie in a place where he's going to be getting hit a lot, so that he can spread his ignited status to the entire enemy team. Skill number 4, Realm of Flame. Eddie decreases ignited target's attack by 8% for 3 rounds when he attacks them. At level 3, this effect is a 12% attack reduction. So, as he spreads his ignition status effects around the enemy team and counterattacks them, he is also reducing their attack by 12%. This boosts your whole team's ability to take hits. It's a great debuff, and applying it to a whole team is a huge win for you. And last up, we've got his unique equipment, Deathly Resonance, and his ability Hell Carnival. At level 1 through 9, basic attacks deal a bonus 50% attack to ignited targets. At levels 10 through 19, basic attacks deal a bonus 100% attack to burning targets. At levels 20 through 29 and beyond, basic attacks deal 150% attack to burning targets. And at level 30, additionally, Soulfire Mark Restoring Effect increases by 100%. So this just further enhances his already fantastic skill set. So I just really want to say how amazingly designed his skill set is. It's just ended up in such a way that he plays better as a tank than he does as a DPS, right? So he wants to be spreading his status effect as far as possible. The best way to do that is putting him in position 1. That's right, ladies and gents, Eddie is pretty much a tank. And by this I mean, to get the most out of him, focusing on defensive stats will see you way better off than focusing on offensive stats. That being said, his ratios are still excellent, and if you did want to play him as a DPS, you could probably build him that way. He just doesn't excel in that role. So, looking at his skills, what do they mean in terms of talents and stigmata choices? Using my Eddie as an example, let's have a look at the talents that I'm using. At the legendary talent slot, we are using Super Shield. Pretty straightforward. This is to give him some early survivability and get free ignitions out to the enemy team. Just having that shield there essentially just keeps him up and takes hits a little bit better early on when everyone has ultimates. Moving on to the mythic talent, Vitality Armor. As a position 1 loving guy, he's going to be getting hit. Increasing his long-term survivability with this. If you feel you don't really need it, you can go for Weakness Aimer. As he self-heals, his HP will be topped up most of the time, and other talents are just not really worth it. Mythic +1 talent, Blade Slash. So, this is probably one of 2 aggressive talents in my personal build. He is specialized in hitting the front row, so this one just makes sense. All the defensive options are also considerations here, but I think with the rest of them, you can afford to go Blade Slash here. Mythic 3 talent. I use Concentration. However, Ghost Curse is also definitely an option, as his basic attack does target 3 people, right? He gets a lot out of Ghost Curse. Though I go Concentration because he won't retaliate when he is stunned. And that's what this build is all about. Spreading his ignition to the enemy team as much as possible. Mythic +4 talent, Tactical Shield. This is to boost tankiness and to stop him from getting crit out. And it just really does boost his survivability, especially versus heavy hitters. And because of his ignition, he actually doesn't really need Shield Breaker. Like, his damage over time just keeps shields down by itself. And that's... So right here you will go for Tactical Shield, basically. Mythic +5, Gaze of Death. Built like this, Eddie will last to take full advantage of it. And the boost to his attack is both defensive and offensive. So this is just really doubling down on that sort of long-term build. Stigmata. I have two different recommendations here. The first one is Domination 4 out of 4 and Evolution 2 out of 2. As a multi-hitting basic attacker with low attack, this will boost his DPS by quite a lot, which is pretty low, especially using this build. And the extra HP is definitely more valuable than attack or skill damage here. And the second one is what I'm currently running. It's kind of like if you don't have enough stigmatas to do that first set, this one's also pretty damn good. But even if you did have the stigmatas, in some situations I feel like this one is even better anyway. And that is Judgment 2 out of 2, Evolution 2 out of 2, and Annihilation 2 out of 2. And my reasoning for this, right, is his low base stats really do need a bit of help. So boosting up all his base stats just makes him a lot more well-rounded. So, artifacts. Artifacts. For the longest time, I was using the wrong artifacts on Eddie. And this is going back to that first point of believing that he was a DPS rather than a tank, and the best two for Eddie are Fictional Reality and Divine Prayer. Both of these make him exceptionally difficult to kill, and all but guaranteeing he spreads his ignite to the whole enemy team, and it allows him to fully function as a tank. So he definitely needs one of these two on him, although I will mention Misanthropy and Devil's Pupil for the whales out there, as both of these will have the same effect and give him excellent results as well. So, uses, pros and cons, let's break it down now. Where is Eddie useful? What's the good? What's the bad? Let's have a look. Eddie is pretty good in X-War, Darkhead, and PvP. Most people only use him for Faction Wanted, which he also is incredible for. I just cleared the last stage of Dark Faction Wanted thanks to Eddie. But I would definitely say he's undervalued elsewhere. He does struggle to help in sort of time travel levels, hub trials, and Void Championship. He is not a good single target DPS. But his PvP and his X-War ability is what gives him long-term viability here. Right. So going over his pros and cons. Eddie is an excellent tank, and not in the traditional sense, just that he's great at taking hits and boosting your own team's survivability. Second up is that he is excellent at keeping shields down. And this is really important in PvP right now, because Thinker and shields in general are top tier. Like, they reduce the damage that you take by a large margin, and they really boost up team survivability. So being able to keep shields down and keep your damage dealers hitting hard is quite important. He has self-sustain, which builds into his tanking ability, and really just, you see how it all sort of fits together and synergizes very well into this build. And the last one is that he is incredibly easy to build. You can purchase him from the Star Trek store, so even on an early account, if you would like, you could invest in Eddie from the early stages of the game. And I remember when I was first progressing through the game, I actually relied on him quite a lot early on, as he is a good early hero. He does have a bit of a phase through the middle of the game where he struggles a bit, kind of a bit like Blaze Centaur, but he comes back hard. Right? And so moving on to his downsides. What are his downsides? He has low base stats. You can't get around that. Eventually, they'll probably release a S Plus hero which does everything he does, but better. But for now, he's the only one in that sort of niche. But his low base stats will let him down in the long run. He has no crowd control, so you have to make up for it elsewhere on your team. He's pretty confusing for new players and people who haven't watched this video, because they expect him to be a DPS when in fact he is a tank. And the last but not least is, as a supposed DPS, he has pretty low damage output. It's sort of one and the same with the last one, but I just thought I'd put it out there as a separate one. Anyway, so in conclusion, I would say that Eddie is severely underutilized and undervalued by the community. This is due to a mismatch between how he's sold to the player and how he's actually useful to them. He has a pretty much uncontested niche in the current PvP meta, and is exceptionally useful for clearing dark faction wanted. Used as a tank, his amazing skills really come to life, and has the ability to slot into most teams' position 1 as their main tank. For newer players, I'd probably still recommend building Blaze Centaur first. However, he is still a solid option if you want to invest in him long term. Hope this video helped you out. I'm working on a few of these at a time now. I want to release them way more frequently than I currently do, but we'll see if time allows. Remember to support me with a like, subscribe, and or comment. Share it around if you want. It really helps me out a lot. Anyway, I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Cheers.